We have Matt, with the CEO of Never Thirst. And Matt, I meant to ask you, how do you say your last name?
It's Letourneau.
Letourneau. Oh, well, that's so much easier than it looks on paper. But Matt Letourneau, okay, he's the CEO of Never Thirst. And you guys are up to some pretty good in the States and beyond. So first, welcome. And
Thanks,
second, give us a little background. Never Thirst. I love the name, by the way. But what is your mission?
Yeah, our mission is to bring clean and living water to the unreached, and so that's a little bit of a double entendre. Most people probably don't know that there's almost 1 billion people left in the world that don't have access to clean drinking water, and so they're unreached with clean water, and we do it through the vehicle of the local church, and so they're also unreached with the gospel. And so we position local pastors in a position to be the hero of the story, telling people that they have hope not only in this life, through getting clean water, but also hope in the next.
I think that's something, at least here in the States, for the most part, we take for granted, is the fact that we can go in, we can turn on our faucets, we can fill up our bathtubs, we can, boil our water for our pasta or make coffee or whatever it may be, and really not think too much about it. But then when you get right outside our borders, there are, you said 1 billion or 1 million people? I can't remember the number.
It's 785 million.
That's close. That's getting up there towards 1 billion. Not really, but to 100 billion that maybe still don't have that kind of access. So what does that do to a village or to individuals when they don't have clean drinking water?
Yeah, I think it's staggering, the amount of social ills in the world. If you could peel the proverbial onion and just look at all the layers of things that are happening in the world, like women not being able to get an education, obviously disease and death, orphans, all the way down to child trafficking. If you're born a woman in any of the countries that we work in, your lot in life is to walk 4 to 8 hours a day to find water that's going to eventually make you and your family sick, waterborne disease. And so it prevents you from getting an education, and that's where all the traffickers are, on those well-worn paths to get water. And so if you address clean drinking water in a village, you are solving trafficking, education, disease and death, and addressing orphan care.
You're also freeing up time for them to be able to invest back into education, sort of their families, creating these other opportunities for work and income. When you look at some of the videos that I saw over on Never Thirst, it really starts to tug at your heart to see that so much time is spent to collect the things that are needed for everyday life. Again, that I feel like we sometimes take advantage of also, but take for granted, I think would be a better way of saying it. But then you go to the ask, like, well, then how do you do that? Because it's like, oh, you just bring them clean water. Well, is it that easy? Like, you just get, or how does that work? How do you actually get clean water to maybe a village that has been, centuries without it?
Yeah, it's extremely complex. A lot of the times these people, like you said, it's been millennia even, right, where these people have lived without clean water, and they've just died of things like diarrhea forever and ever. A lot of places where we work, especially in Africa, they won't even name their children for up to 4 years because of the high likelihood that they will lose their children. And so it just becomes a way of life. So how do we do it? How do we get it done? Well, it's a super complex thing. So the way that we do it is that we don't own any equipment. We firmly believe that the best way to help people in that context is to use people that grew up in that context. And so what we do is we have about a 25-step process where our programs team, run by a guy named Jason Berry, who lives in Australia, and another guy named Steve Chi, who lives in Thailand, who are water experts. And they find local engineering and drilling companies in these countries and that are small businesses and say, are they businesses that we feel like we can invest in and scale, that know the language, understand the culture, who do good work, and if they tick off our 25-step process of being fiduciary, financially responsible, as well as our ministry philosophy about how we share the gospel of Jesus with people on the ground through the vehicle of clean water, then we'll give them tryout money. Give them about $100,000 to do water programming, and if it comes back that they've been very faithful with that little investment, then we will invest a lot more and begin a deep relationship with that company in that country. They're all locals. They're all indigenous people. There's no American or Western person there. It's like we're really trying to create jobs for them and then help them do a phenomenal engineering job of a water solution that would be appropriate for that context.
It'd be sustainable too. I mean, that way they can take ownership for it. They can sort of move it forward. They can take part too in moving everything forward in sort of that way. And I know that there's not one size fits all. I know some think you just drill a well. Some say there's like filters involved. So you really have to figure out what works best for the remote locations. What are some of the locations kind of like to help give us an idea of maybe why they can't get the clean drinking water already?
Sure. Well, corrupt government is everywhere, and if you take a place like Cambodia, for example, it has tons of surface water all over the country. I mean, it's a wet country, heavy rainy season, and so people could walk 100 yards and get to a dirty stream or a dirty pond, and water's plentiful, right? And so we don't have to necessarily drill in a lot of parts in Cambodia. Places that have surface water, you could just do a household filter where women and girls could go out with their buckets and come back, put it into a biosand filter, and it comes out 99.9% pathogen free, and it's completely clean for drinking. And so that's a simple solution in a place like Cambodia. You go to a place like Niger or Chad, Africa, I mean, you're talking about extensive drilling 400 feet into the ground where we have to build an entire solar farm, attach that pump, install a solar pump where it sucks it into a rain tank as big as this room, and then gravity feeds it down into tap stands that go 1.5 miles or 2 miles through multiple villages. And a household filter in Cambodia costs $400. A huge solar pump system in Chad or Niger costs $100,000. So, I mean, it's wide and varied. It's
wide and varied, but you also see there's a lot of uphill, I guess, battles to it, but then the reward has to be great. So what's it like for a village whenever, they see clear water?
Oh, it's a total game changer. It's life-changing. There's tears. There's rejoicing. We have a great video of one of our implementing pastors in Uganda standing on top of the hand pump with his Bible, with the entire village dancing and celebrating and singing because they've been praying for clean water. And it's the first time that they and their children had ever experienced clean water. Now their kids could go to school, and it changes their life forever.
And I'm sure when you get to know the stories, too, it changes the people here in the States and those in Mississippi who help your organization Never Thirst, which I love when I said you and your team came to Corinth, Mississippi, and you were like, you and one other person travel out to sort of share the word and make the connection. And you made the trip to Corinth, Mississippi. How long ago was it that you came to Corinth?
Oh, goodness. It had to probably be summertime, maybe spring.
So not years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's been with it. It was 20. Yeah, it was 2021.
Oh, the time really does seem to fly when you're having fun, Matt. But I was like, man, this was 5 years ago now. So I mean, within the last sort of year, you came to Corinth, and so do you just connect with churches to come and sort of share the mission of Never Thirst?
No, actually, we don't solicit churches at all. Actually, most of the time, churches come to us our experience with churches is that unless it's their idea, they're not necessarily welcome. And so what we want to do is we want to be a resource to churches that want us to help them become a resource to, like, the unreached population of the world. A lot of people here, maybe your listeners, go to church, and a very interesting statistic is that only 1% of all Christian giving goes to the unreached. And that's 3 billion people in the world.
There's the B word. We got the billion. We got a 3 billion. Well, you reached some people in Corinth who are ready to reach part of those 3 billion, and that is John and Jennifer Shipp's story. And we're going to share that and more coming up next here on Good Things. Finding out more about Never Thirst, we have Matt Letourneau. He's the CEO, and he made his way to Corinth, Mississippi, maybe about 5 to 6 months ago now, not 5 to 6 years ago, to share the mission with a couple, John and Jennifer, who found themselves going through a familiar story for many and a way to turn maybe a tragedy in their own life and use it as a way to do some good for others. So how did you meet John and Jennifer, Matt?
Yeah, it was through another couple, GT and Sally Beth McCullough. And they, God had been working in their lives separate from John and Jennifer, just about being burden for the unreached of the world, and like how is a really effective way to reach people as Christians with the gospel of Jesus in places that never have heard him. And they said, well, meeting a physical need is a great way to do that. And so they had read this book called Radical, which was really a challenge to the way that they were living. They were burdened hearing that 3 billion people in the world were unreached, and that 1% of all Christian giving was going to reach those people. And so in that book, the author had written about Never Thirst. And GT reached out to Brandon Gossett, who is our Chief Development Officer, and said, hey, man, will you get on a Zoom call with a couple of college buddies of mine that were still reading this book together and just tell us about what the philosophy and strategy of your organization is. And so Brandon got on the call, talked to GT. GT got fired up. They raised money, sponsored a well together as just a group of dudes. And Brandon just nurtured the relationship. We got to know Sally Beth. She's just the sweetest gal, just huge heart for people and heart for the Lord. And GT and Sally Beth said, we want you to meet our friends. Will you come to Corinth? So we said, sure, we'll go to Corinth and have lunch. And so we ended up meeting in downtown Corinth in this amazing restaurant named Smith. The owner and chef of that restaurant, super generous, created a great spread, gave us a private table in the back of the restaurant, and GT had just gathered some friends, and Jennifer and John were in that group. And unbeknownst to us, some of them didn't even know why they were there. They just went because GT and Sally Beth had invited them. And so we got a chance to share about the water crisis in the world, and I shared a picture of a recent trip that I had taken to Chad, Africa, of a lady who showed me a picture of what looks like chocolate milk mud water, basically, and said, I ride 4 hours on a donkey one way to get this water. Will you come and help us? And I showed that picture to Jennifer Shipp, and she was wrecked and said, I had no idea that people still live like this. And I think she was hit with a lot of different realities at one time. That, number one, if she had been born any of these other places in the world, her reality would be very different. And the fact that these ladies were losing children, and she herself had a tremendous, tragic story of losing a child, and knew that pain that a lot of these ladies encounter every day. 800 kids a day die of lack of clean water. And I think that statistic really, really rocked her world.
And together, her and her husband, I think, along with others in Corinth, have really set out the stage and made a pretty big pledge, or at least a pretty big, have an ambition to really help in a major way. How did they connect with the site, or which city did they choose to help?
Yeah, they became really enamored with a story of an Indian pastor in the northeast section of India, in a province called Jharkhand, India. Who this pastor had been ministering to these people, or trying to minister to these people for a long time, and they had actually killed his 2 sons because they did not want to hear the message that he was bringing them about the gospel of Jesus. And he loved them so much that he wanted to continue to try to reach them for hope in the new life through Jesus. And, when he connected with our guy on the ground in India, he said, if I can help you get clean water, will you go back to these people? And he said, yeah, I do. I'll go back. And so when John and Jennifer and GT and Sally Beth, when they heard that story, they immediately, I think their hearts were connected with this guy and the passion that he had to reach people, aligned with their passion. And so they said, we want to know, what is it going to take to reach this area with clean and living water? So we were able to share that with them.
And they're trying to share that with everyone possible, which we're trying to share with you today here on Good Things. One thing that touched me about Jennifer and John's story is just that so many listening know what it's like to suffer a loss of a child, whether it's, a miscarriage, or whether it's unfortunate circumstances anytime after birth. A parent should never be on this side of the grave whenever their child goes to meet the Lord. So you can have that kind of connection with it of like, wow, that's a pain that no matter where you are in the world is the same for all parents, I would say, or to some degree. And when you start to humanize humans that you everywhere, then you start to realize that you can do more to help than you think that you can. And it can be as simple as just connecting with those that are doing sort of the big things. And from what I saw, John and Jennifer and the rest of them there in Corinth, man, they've got some big dreams of moving lots of water there for them. I think was their goal, like, what is their goal they're trying to reach on their pledge? Is it like $1 million, I think it is, or something crazy?
It's $1.5 million over 3 years. And they're a third of the way there almost.
That's what I was thinking. Wow. So what do you think about it when people first hear that connects? I mean, I know for John and Jennifer it was personal in terms of the loss of a child. And I know she mentioned in her piece that she couldn't unsee what she had seen. And I think that's part of it, too, once you see. But sometimes we see these photos that, come across from those in third worlds, and we go, aw, but not everybody's all to move into action. So what do you think is it that's moving so many Mississippians and their supporters into action for what's going on?
Well, I mean, as a Christian, I just chalk it up to the movement of the Holy Spirit moving in people's hearts to do something and to be people of action instead of just people of talk. John and Jennifer and GT and Sally Beth have been people of action, and they've rallied their friends around this cause. They care that people have hope in this life, and they care that people have hope in the next life. And they, like I said, I think Jennifer specifically was wrecked all at the same time with the reality of that if she had been born in another context, her life would look very, very different. All at the same time, by understanding that the statistics of 3 billion people are considered unreached with the gospel, and almost 1 billion of those don't have clean water, as well as the fact that these clean water is like the ground zero to taking care of all these other issues that I've already mentioned. I think she was hit with all of that at the same time and said, I can do something. I might not be able to go there, and they might never be able to get a passport and come here and tell me their situation, but I can do something. I can raise awareness and be an advocate and raise money and change their lives by helping them have clean water and access to the gospel. So that's exactly what they did. I mean, they rallied their community, and Corinth is blowing up. It's unbelievable.
Well, and I think, too, Mississippi is known for being the most giving state, even though we have our own hardships when it comes to, financial issues, food insecurity, all the things. But it's because I feel like we do get that no matter how small or big you show up, you can make a huge difference. And while I think it's so important to take care of our own here, I think we're also called to take care of everybody as well. And so, whenever you get pulled in one direction, I think you can be pulled in all directions. You can be pulled domestically, you can be pulled internationally, and, there's no right or sort of wrong. It's what are you doing, I think, is the question that we should all be wrestling with. And it sounds like, you can at least be part of something great. I mean, when you say $1.5 million, Matt, like my heart goes, oh, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of cheese. But, it takes just a little bit at a time to sort of get that. So if they get their $1.5 million, or when they get their $1.5 million,
it's happening.
It's happening.
It's
okay.
Happening.
We're going to see things into the future. Like, what will happen? Like, do you already know what system will happen for that particular community, or will all that sort of be figured out? Or
I mean, they're giving, and we're doing the work in real time. I mean, so far this year, 117 hand pumps have been drilled and installed. It's already given clean water to, golly, I just got these. Brandon just texted me the latest statistics here, so let me tell you exactly what that is.
So it's not like it's just being stored up in terms of the money or anything. It's going straight on out there to
114 wells have been dug. 17,000 people have received clean water for the first time. Their goal is to drill 430 wells. It'll serve over 50,000 people whose lives will be forever changed. I mean, we know exactly how many people are in this region. We know exactly how many water points it's going to take, and we know exactly how much money. And so to do 430 water points in Jharkhand, India, it was going to cost $1.5 million, and they're a third of the way there in the first year. So, I mean,
and if we want to rally behind our Mississippians who are trying to move mountains overseas with Never Thirst, how do we do that?
Yep. You can do it. Go to Corinth for Clean Water, I believe, is the website. And do you tag anything? Can you tag it on your page?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I would just say go to the page here or go to Never Thirst and just tag it, hit the donate button and say Corinth for Clean Water.
I'll make sure I share it in the Good Things Facebook group. Well, Matt, thank you for taking your time to share your story here on Good Things. I can't wait to hear all the good that will come from it.
Excellent.
Love
being here.
You guys stick with us. We got more for you coming up next.